Rain clung to the glass like a moving curtain when Lena Valenti stepped out onto the penthouse balcony. The city spread below in cold pins of light, but her eyes went to the private drive that curled up toward the house. 3 black cars had stopped halfway up the hill, lined up in a way that didn't look like guests arriving, it looked like a blockade. Headlights burned through the mist while figures stepped out, dark and deliberate against the wet asphalt. Down by the security gate, Adrian's men moved fast, cutting through the rain in sharp lines of black suits and earpieces. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to call this a business thing, a corporate emergency, anything but what it looked like. Then the intercom beside the balcony door crackled softly. A man's voice came through, low and unfamiliar, wrapped in a smile she couldn't see. "Good evening," he said. "Is Mrs. Valenti home?" Before Lena could answer, the balcony door slid open and Adrian stepped out, bringing the cool rush of conditioned air with him. He wasn't in his usual relaxed home clothes. He still wore the dark suit from his meeting, shirt open at the throat but tie gone, sleeves rolled once as if he'd rolled them up to work and never rolled them back down. He didn't look at her first, he looked at the cars. His jaw set, the affection she was used to seeing in his eyes replaced in a heartbeat by sharp calculation. "Inside," he said quietly, "a command, not a request." As soon as they crossed the threshold, his voice changed. "Lockdown, now." Doors hummed as magnetic bolts slid into place. The alarm system went silent in that heavy way that meant it was fully armed. Somewhere in the house, something mechanical clanged shut. Lena's chest tightened. This wasn't a power outage, or a drill. Adrian watched the security feed on the wall, then spoke into his phone, his voice cold. "No one gets near my wife," he said. "If they try, you stop them." It didn't sound like a CEO talking about corporate spies. It sounded like a man preparing for a fight. 2 security guards swept into the room with professional calm, one nodding to Adrian before moving toward Lena. She knew them by sight, quiet men in tailored suits who usually blended into the background at events, carrying nothing more threatening than a discreet radio. Tonight, everything felt sharper. "Mrs. Valenti, we are moving you upstairs," one of them said, his tone polite but leaving no space for argument. As they guided her toward the private elevator, Lena noticed the way one guard's jacket lifted when he reached for the call button. The fabric pulled back just enough for her to see the matte black curve of a gun holstered at his waist. Her breath stuttered. There was a difference between knowing your husband had security and seeing a weapon inches from your arm in your own home. "Is this really necessary?" she asked, voice thinner than she wanted. No one answered. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing her in with mirrored walls and the soft hum of cables. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Automatically, she glanced down. A news alert glowed on the screen. Anonymous billionaire linked to organized crime families? The blurred photo below the headline showed a man stepping out of a car, head turned away, but the cut of the suit, the posture, the side profile, it looked a lot like Adrian. The elevator opened into a smaller lounge, all dark wood, low lighting, and a single wall of glass looking out over the storm. One of the guards checked the corners like there might be someone hiding behind the furniture, then stepped back into the elevator, leaving her alone. The doors slid shut with a soft finality that felt too much like being locked in. Lena paced once, twice, palms damp, until Adrian's footsteps sounded in the hallway. He entered without knocking, bringing a chill with him that had nothing to do with the rain. "What is going on?" she asked before he could speak. "Who are those men? Why is everyone armed?" He walked past her to a small console, checking a hidden panel she'd never noticed before, confirming the room was sealed. Only then did he look at her. His eyes were focused, almost too calm. "It's a threat against the company," he said. "It's being handled." The words were smooth, rehearsed. The muscle ticking in his jaw was not. "Threats against companies don't put guns in my hallway," she shot back. "Adrian, are you in trouble?" For a moment, something raw flashed in his face, not fear, but anger at the idea. "No," he said. "Trouble comes for the people who cross me." The room went quiet. The man she married, the one who charmed her over cheap coffee before she knew his net worth, had never sounded like that. Before she could push him further, a knock, too sharp to be polite, sounded on the lounge door. Adrian opened it halfway. His head of security, a broad man with a calm stare, stood there holding out a phone. "It's him," the man said. He insisted it be on speaker. Adrian took the phone, flicked his eyes toward Lena once, then set it on the table between them and hit the button. Static crackled, then the same voice from the intercom filled the room, closer now, almost casual. "Adrian," the man drawled. "You really do know how to make a welcome party. Burning my access routes, blocking my cars, locking that pretty wife of yours in a cage up there." Lena swallowed. She hadn't told anyone she was upstairs. "Marco," Adrian said, and the way he said the name told her this wasn't business competition. This was history. "You're trespassing." A low chuckle slid through the speaker. Big word, coming from the man who built half his empire on seizing what didn't belong to him. "Speaking of," the voice brightened, like he'd just remembered something amusing. "How's Mrs. Valenti? Or should I say Lena Carver? Funny thing, you signing your name over her father's company all those years ago and then marrying the girl it crushed." Lena's fingers went cold. "You're lying," she whispered, though no one had accused her of anything. Marco hummed. "Tell her, Adrian. Tell her who authorized the call that ruined her old man. Tell her where the money really comes from. Or I will." The line clicked dead, leaving only the soft sound of the rain and Lena's uneven breathing. She looked at Adrian. He didn't rush to deny it. He just stared at the phone like it was a loaded gun that had just gone off without firing a bullet, yet. Adrian guided Lena through a narrow service hallway she had never seen before, the lights flickering softly as if they were deeper in the house than she ever realized. His hand rested lightly on her back, not tender, not rough, just guiding, like he was moving a priceless object to shelter. He opened a door marked only with a discreet panel of black glass. The room beyond was warm, quiet, and wrong. Too quiet. Too sealed. "You'll stay here," he said. His tone carried the finality of a man giving orders in a war zone. She stepped inside, and the door slid shut behind her with a magnetic thud. She turned instinctively, reaching for the handle. It didn't move. Her stomach dropped. The lock was on his side, not hers. And somewhere behind the wall, mechanisms whirred, not locking her in safely, but locking her in completely. Adrian didn't leave immediately. He stayed with her in the soundproof room, the storm muffled behind layers of reinforced walls. He stepped close enough for her to see the tightness in his shoulders, the part of him he tried so hard to hide. Slowly, he touched her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone like he was memorizing something he feared losing. "Nothing will happen to you tonight," he said, voice lower than before, softer than anything else in the house. "Not while I'm here." She tried to hold his gaze. "Tell me why Marco knows my father's name." For a heartbeat, Adrian froze, the smallest break, barely visible. When his voice returned, it was calm again. Too calm. He's reaching. Trying to rattle you. But she'd seen it. The flicker of guilt he tried to bury. The way he looked away instead of lying directly. When he left, the silence in the room pressed in from all sides. Lena sank onto the edge of the bed, her pulse still racing from adrenaline and confusion. She stared at the rain on the window, listening to her own breath steadying. Memories surfaced without permission, Adrian taking her out on their first date to a rooftop bar he'd just happened to know, the anonymous payment that cleared all her college debt a week before he proposed, the way he always tensed when she mentioned her father's ruined company. Back then she'd called it intuition, coincidence, kindness. Now it felt like a thread she had ignored. A thread someone else had been pulling. And then a sharper memory, the night her father died, overhearing him say, "I can't outrun these men forever, Lena," before taking a call from a deep, calm voice she could never forget. A voice that sounded too much like Adrian's. She pressed a hand to her mouth as the room tilted slightly. She had told Adrian nothing about that call. So how had he known her maiden name on their first date? A thin monitor on the wall flickered on, motion detection switching to live feed from the property. Lena stepped closer, drawn despite herself. Down the hill, flames licked up the side of a burning car, one of Adrian's. She recognized the license plate. Rain hissed as it slammed against the fire, steam rising in ghostly waves. A second car idled next to the blaze, windows tinted so dark they looked like obsidian. The door opened. A man stepped out, casual in the chaos, umbrella slanted against the storm. He lifted his head toward the camera, as if he could see her behind the screen. Slowly, he raised his hand. In his fingers, a phone. He turned the screen outward. A photo glowed through the rain, Lena's old family house, the porch light still on the night her father died. Her breath caught. This wasn't random. This wasn't a feud. This was aimed at her. The door unlocked with a soft click, one of the only sounds in the room she had come to fear. Adrian stepped inside, already scanning the screen before looking at her. For the first time, tension cracked through his calm like lightning under skin. "They're escalating," he murmured. "We have to move fast." "Adrian," she said, voice unsteady, "Marco showed a picture of my old house." He didn't answer. He didn't even blink. "Why does he know where I lived? Why does he know my maiden name? Why does he know anything about my father?" He exhaled once, a slow, painful sound, the kind he would never let his men hear. "Because I never should have kept you this close to my world," he said. "But it's too late to pull you back out of it." She took a step toward him. "Did Marco have something to do with my father's death?" His jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists he tried to relax. "There are things you don't understand yet," he said. "And things you might hate me for knowing." Her throat tightened. "Then tell me." His eyes lifted to hers, colder than the storm outside, softer than any apology. "If I tell you everything," he said quietly, "you won't look at me the same." She felt her voice break. "Maybe I shouldn't." Adrian froze. Completely. Like her words hit something inside him he couldn't protect behind steel doors. The silence that followed cut deeper than any threat outside. The safe wing went dark without warning. A low click sounded in the ceiling, then the emergency strips along the floor flickered on, bathing the room in a deep red glow that made every shadow look sharper. Lena's heart kicked up as the generator hummed in the walls, filling the silence with a low, uneasy vibration. She moved slowly, brushing her fingers along the textured wallpaper, her mind racing with images of the burning car, the man on the camera, and Marco's voice whispering truths she wasn't ready to face. A picture frame on the far wall hung slightly crooked, the only thing in the perfectly curated room that looked out of place. She reached for it without thinking. When she touched the edge, it shifted more easily than a normal frame should, and behind it, she saw the faint outline of a steel panel door. A hidden safe. In her husband's safe room. Lena hesitated, listening for footsteps outside the hall. Nothing. The house felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that came right before something broke. She pressed her fingers to the panel. It clicked open silently, as if Adrian had used it recently, or expected to come back to it soon. Inside sat a stack of old documents, neatly arranged, the edges worn and yellowed. Not jewelry. Not weapons. Papers. Files. She pulled the top folder out carefully. The label typed at the top stopped her breath. Carver Industrial Holdings, Asset Seizure and Collection Report. Her father's company. Her father's nightmare. Her father's death. She slid the paper out with trembling hands. Dates, signatures, legal stamps, all too real. Too familiar. And at the bottom of the authorization page was a name she had seen every day for the past 3 years. Authorized by A. Valenti. The room tilted. The air seemed to shrink. Her knees weakened as she clutched the folder to her chest, trying to breathe around the truth pressing in on her like the red lights themselves. She sank to the floor, the cold tile grounding her just enough to keep her upright. She flipped through the next pages, a blur of signatures and notes and stamped recordings. Then, another sheet. A transcript. At the top, lead field agent, Marco De Santis. The date matched the night before the accident that took her father. Lena skimmed the lines, her breath catching as she recognized the cadence of a voice she had memorized in fear. Her father pleading. A man replying calmly. Settle it tonight, the transcript read. The Valenti order stands. And under that, approved for execution, A. Valenti. Her hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sound that felt like breaking. All the pieces she'd avoided, the way Adrian never talked about the early years, the way he flinched at the word debt, the way he learned her maiden name before she'd said it, they didn't just fit now. They locked into place. The truth wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was a signature. Lena doubled over the folder as if the weight of the paper itself could crush her chest. Memories rushed her faster than the storm outside, her father's tired smile the night before he died, the whispered warning about men who don't forgive, the way he kissed her forehead like he knew he wouldn't see her again. All this time, she had married the man whose empire had taken everything from her family. The man whose orders had set the destruction in motion. Her breath came in short, shaking bursts she couldn't control. Tears blurred the red lights into streaks of color across the room. She didn't hear the door until it clicked open, quietly, like Adrian didn't want to startle her. He stepped inside, pulling off his earpiece, wiping rain from his hair with the back of his hand. Then he saw the open safe. And the file in her lap. And the way she couldn't lift her head. His voice came out rougher than the storm. Lena. It wasn't a question. It was the sound of something inside him breaking. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, then stopped short, like he wasn't sure if he should touch her or keep his distance. She lifted the file with shaking hands, fingers smudged against the ink, and whispered, "You signed this." He swallowed hard, jaw tense, eyes locked on the page like it was a weapon. I authorized hundreds of collections in those years, he said, voice low, careful. I didn't know who every name belonged to. I didn't know which one was your father's company. But Marco did, she said, the words cracking as they left her. He was there. He called him. He threatened him. Adrian's eyes darkened, guilt bleeding into anger, not at her, but at the truth itself. I cut Marco off when I found out how far he went, he said. I never sanctioned what he did in the end. I never wouldn't have what? Lena whispered. Destroyed my family? Left my father to die? Adrian closed his eyes for a second, a moment of human weakness he never would have allowed anyone else to see. When he opened them, the truth sat there, raw and unarmored. I don't know, he said softly. I don't know what I could have stopped, or what I caused. Something inside her fractured completely. She stared at him, at the man she married, the man who had held her, protected her, loved her, and for the first time, she didn't know if she was looking at a savior or the villain of her life. And in that terrible silence, Adrian took one half-step forward, as if to reach her, and she flinched. He froze. Absolutely still. The storm outside cracked like an omen. The walls trembled before Lena even processed the sound. A deep, concussive boom rolled through the mansion, shaking dust from the ceiling vents and sending a tremor up through the floorboards. A second later, the alarm screamed to life, a shattering chorus of red strobes, shrill pulses, and automated warnings echoing through every room. Adrian moved instantly. No hesitation, no confusion, just pure, lethal clarity. He grabbed Lena's arm, pulling her behind him as he swept the hallway with a single, assessing glance. They breached the outer line, he muttered, half to her, half to the comm in his hand. Sector 3 is down. Get my wife to the vault. Adrian, she started, her voice tight. Not now, he said, voice sharp enough to cut. Another explosion hit somewhere below them, rattling the window glass until hairline cracks split across the pane like white lightning. Over the intercom, Marco's smooth voice filled the house, taunting, amused, too calm for the chaos he'd started. Adrian, he called, didn't you teach your men to aim better? I expected more bite from the Valenti Empire. Adrian's grip tightened. Not on her wrist, on her fear. Stay behind me, he whispered, and for the first time, she realized he wasn't asking. He was begging. He guided her down a narrow side corridor, the emergency lights flickering against the marble, making every shadow seem alive. The further they went, the more the sounds of gunfire echoed through the floors, short bursts, controlled, nothing like the movies. This was real, precise violence. Adrian stopped at a reinforced door she had never seen before, keyed in a code, and the panel lit green. Inside, he ordered. It's safe. She didn't move. Her breath hitched, and she shook her head. You lied to me, she whispered. You kept the truth locked in a safe, just like you're locking me. He closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, a crack in the armor. I lied to protect you, he said. To keep you far from what I was before I found you. You knew who I was before you found me, she shot back. You knew everything about my father, and you married me anyway. His jaw tightened. Lena, if you stay out here, I can't protect you. Then tell me the truth and let me choose. Gunfire popped somewhere below them, closer now. Adrian exhaled, slow and painful. Then his voice dropped to a low, tortured rasp. You can hate me tomorrow, he said. But tonight, you walk behind me. Or you don't walk at all. He grabbed her hand, not forceful, but unyielding, and pulled her toward a maintenance stairwell meant for staff and security, not a billionaire's wife. It was dark, lit only by flickering emergency bulbs that painted everything in pulses of white and shadow. Each step downward was punctuated by distant shouting, boots pounding across concrete, and the metallic clang of something heavy falling. Halfway to the next landing, Adrian stopped abruptly. His arm came up across her stomach, holding her back as he pressed her gently against the wall. "Don't move," he whispered. Footsteps echoed below them, not the synchronized, controlled stride of Adrian's men, but lighter, uneven. Searching. Predatory. Lena froze, her breath shallow against his shoulder. Adrian's hand found hers again, steady, warm, grounding her despite the chaos. The footsteps paused directly beneath their landing. Whoever it was inhaled once, sharply, like smelling the air. Adrian didn't breathe. Neither did she. After an agonizing moment, the steps moved on, fading down another hallway. Adrian waited 3 more seconds, exactly 3, before pulling her with him again. "We are almost there," he murmured. "Don't look back." But she did. And in the darkness below, she thought she saw the silhouette of a man watching them retreat. They reached a private office on the mezzanine level, a space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lower courtyard. Adrian slammed the door shut behind them and drew the heavy bolt across. The room was dim except for the glow of city lights filtering through the rain-streaked glass. Lena stepped toward the window, and froze. Below, standing in the storm with an umbrella slanted casually over his shoulder, was Marco de Santos. He looked up as if he felt her gaze. He smirked, lifted his free hand, and waved the umbrella slightly like greeting an old friend. "He's here," she whispered. Adrian joined her, expression unreadable, eyes cold enough to freeze the rain midair. Marco shouted upward, his voice unnervingly clear through the storm. "Adrian? Come down here and let's finish what we started." Adrian didn't respond. Marco's smile widened. "Does she know?" he called. "About the file? About the real reason her father couldn't sleep at night?" Lena's chest twisted painfully. Marco lifted a plastic sleeve, a document inside, damp from rain but still legible. "I brought the copy," he shouted. Thought she might want to read the signature for herself. Adrian stepped in front of her, blocking her view, his body a shield even as the truth dangled just outside the glass. Rain hammered the courtyard so hard it sounded like static. Marco tucked the document under his arm and lifted his gun, a sleek black pistol that gleamed under the security floodlights. Adrian's arm shot out instinctively, pulling Lena behind him as he moved closer to the glass. "Don't," he called down, voice a controlled threat. Marco tilted his head. "Still making rules?" he asked. "Still pretending you control the world?" Adrian's jaw locked. "She has nothing to do with this." "She has everything to do with this," Marco said. "She's the only thing you've ever cared about. Which means she's the only thing I have to aim for." Lena felt Adrian tense, the kind of tension that came from a man preparing to trade his life for hers without hesitation. He raised his empty hands slowly, palms out. "Take the money," he said. "Take a route out of the city. I'll give you anything you want. But you leave her out of this." Marco laughed. "There it is. The crack in the Valenti armor." Then he lifted the gun, aimed, and fired. The bullet shattered not the glass, not Adrian, but the document he tossed into the air like an offering. Paper exploded in a white flutter. One page drifted upward in the wind, landing against the broken glass. Lena stared at the wet ink bleeding down its surface. Her name. Her father's company. Adrian's signature. And the storm screamed around them as if the whole world finally saw the truth she had just learned. The courtyard below turned into chaos, shouts, boots slamming against wet stone, the crack of one last gunshot swallowed by the storm. Adrian dragged Lena away from the glass just as security swarmed the lower level. The office door shook once, a distant impact rattling the handle, then fell still as his men secured the hallway. The alarms dulled to a low hum, then cut out entirely. Silence filled the room, thick and trembling. Adrian slumped against the desk, one hand braced on its edge, a thin line of blood trailing down his arm where the bullet's ricochet had grazed him. Lena sat on the floor, spine pressed to the wall, her breath unsteady, her hands still shaking. Adrian lowered himself to his knees in front of her, not touching her, just close enough that she could see the raw fear in his eyes. "Lena," he said quietly, "you're safe. It's over." She looked at him, at the man who had protected her with his body, and broken her life with his signature. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "No, Adrian. It's not over." He sat back on his heels, rain-soaked hair falling across his forehead, the cold weight of reality settling between them. Outside, distant sirens wailed toward the property, back up, clean up, consequences he no longer cared about. "I built everything I have on control," he said. "On making sure no one ever hurt the people I chose." His voice cracked, subtle but undeniable. "Your father's file, it was a name in a stack. A signature on a page. I didn't know the man behind it. I didn't know the family I'd break." Lena swallowed hard. The hurt in her chest ached like bruised bone. "But you found out later," she said. "You knew pieces. You knew enough to hide it." Adrian's gaze dropped. "I knew Marco went further than he was ordered. I knew he threatened people. I didn't know your father was one of them." Then his eyes lifted to hers, tired, unguarded, and bleeding regret. "If I had known it was you, I would have burned every record he touched. Including my own." Her throat tightened. She didn't know if that made it better, or worse. Adrian rose slowly and crossed to the desk. The rain-soaked copy of the asset seizure, the paper Marco shot to pieces, lay half-shredded across the floor. He gathered what remained, the ink running in dark veins, and set it gently on the desk between them. Then he slid a lighter toward her. A simple silver one. The kind he kept in his suit pocket but rarely used. He didn't speak. He didn't push. He just waited, a man finally giving her something he had never offered before, choice. Lena stared at the document through a blur of exhaustion and grief. This paper had taken her father's business, bled her family dry, and forced her into years of scrambling just to survive. And now it sat here, powerless, stripped of secrecy, waiting for her to decide what it meant. She flicked the lighter open, the flame trembling for a moment in the dim room. Adrian watched her with something close to fear, as if whatever happened next might break him more than any bullet. She touched the flame to the edge of the page. The paper curled instantly, embers racing across the lines of his signature. She didn't look away until it was ash. All of it. When it was done, she whispered, "I can't change the past." Her voice steadied. "But I can decide what happens to me now." The last ember died on the metal tray, leaving only a faint curl of smoke drifting upward. Lena stood, her legs unsteady but her resolve clearer than at any moment since the night began. Adrian rose slowly too, almost cautiously, as if unsure whether he was welcome near her anymore. She stepped closer, not into his arms, not into a kiss, but into the space where fear used to live between them. He breathed in sharply, like the closeness alone was a mercy he didn't expect. Her eyes lifted to his. "I'm not forgiving you," she said softly. "Not tonight. Maybe not ever." He nodded once, jaw tight, accepting it like a sentence. She took another breath. "But I'm not running. Not from you. Not from any of this." Something in him broke then, not violently, but quietly, painfully, as if he'd been holding his breath for months. He stepped closer, just enough for his forehead to almost touch hers, his voice dropping to a low promise. "Whoever comes for you," he whispered, "will face me first." The storm outside began to fade, leaving only the slow tap of rain against the glass. Lena didn't step back. She didn't look away. And for the first time since her father died, she felt something that didn't feel like running. It felt like choosing.